The sun was setting as Tom Miller finished mopping the hallway of the Pinewood Community Center. The building was quiet now, with just the occasional squeak of his mop bucket wheels breaking the silence. At 42, Tom had the weathered look of someone who had seen his fair share of life's challenges, but his eyes still held a spark of warmth that appeared whenever he spoke of his daughter. For almost 4 years now, Tom had been working as a janitor at the community center. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills, and most importantly, it came with health insurance for him and 12-year-old Abby. The flexible hours also meant he could be there when she got home from school, something that had become even more important since his wife Linda passed away 3 years ago. "See you tomorrow." "Tom," called out Rita, the front desk receptionist, as she gathered her purse and keys. "Don't work too late, okay?" Tom smiled and waved. "Just finishing up the main hall." "Have a good night." As Rita's footsteps faded, Tom pushed his cleaning cart toward the main performance hall. The community center hosted everything from local theater productions to school choir concerts, and tonight had been a recital for the students of Mrs. Winters's piano studio. Tom had glimpsed parts of it while emptying trash cans earlier. Proud, parents filming on their phones as nervous kids played simplified versions of classical pieces. The large room was dark except for the safety lights along the sides. Tom flipped on the cleaning lights and surveyed the space. Thankfully, these types of events didn't usually leave much of a mess. Just some programs on seats and maybe a few water bottles forgotten under chairs. As he worked his way through the aisles, Tom's eyes kept drifting to the grand piano still sitting center stage. It was a beautiful instrument, polished black with brass pedals that gleamed even in the dim light. So different from the second-hand upright he and Linda had bought years ago, which now sat in the corner of their small apartment's living room. Tom remembered how excited they had been to find that piano at a garage sale. It needed tuning and had a chipped key, but the price had been right for a young couple with big dreams and small wallets. Linda had been so supportive of his music back then. "You've got a gift," she would say after listening to him play in the evenings. "One day everyone's going to know it." Those days felt like another lifetime now. A lifetime before medical bills and funeral costs had forced him to sell most of their possessions. Before he had to explain to a 9-year-old why Mommy wasn't coming home from the hospital. Before music became a painful reminder of everything they'd lost. Tom gathered the last of the programs and pushed his cart to the edge of the stage. He should just finish cleaning and get home. Abby was staying with his sister tonight, but he still had lunches to pack for tomorrow and a load of laundry waiting. But as he moved to turn off the lights, something pulled him toward the stage. It had been so long since he'd touched a piano like this one. Before he really thought about what he was doing, Tom had climbed the side steps to the stage and was standing beside the grand piano. He ran his fingers lightly over the glossy surface, remembering. Tom had been playing since he was 6 years old, when his grandmother noticed how he would pick out tunes by ear on her old piano. By high school, he was winning regional competitions. He had even earned a partial scholarship to the State University's music program, where he met Linda in a music theory class. Life had such strange twists. If someone had told 20-year-old Tom that he would end up cleaning floors instead of playing concert halls, he would have laughed. But here he was. "Just one moment," he whispered to himself, glancing around the empty auditorium. Tom sat down on the bench, positioning his hands over the keys without touching them. The feeling was so familiar, like greeting an old friend. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to play. The first notes were hesitant, rusty from years of neglect, but muscle memory is a powerful thing, and soon his fingers remembered their paths. He played a piece he had performed at his college graduation recital, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. The melancholy first movement filled the empty hall, echoing off the walls and high ceiling. As he played, memories flooded back. Linda sitting in the front row at his recitals. Their tiny first apartment where they squeezed the upright piano against the only free wall. The day they found out they were having a baby. How he had played lullabies for hours, imagining their child growing up surrounded by music. Tom's fingers moved faster as he transitioned into the second movement, more playful and light. He thought of teaching 5-year-old Abby her first simple tunes, her small fingers pressing determinedly on the keys. The pride in her eyes when she mastered Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, the way she would beg, "Play the fast one, Daddy," when she wanted to hear him perform his flashier pieces. The music grew more intense as the emotions washed over him. Tom hadn't allowed himself to feel this deeply in a long time. It was easier to focus on the day-to-day, getting Abby to school on time, making sure bills were paid, keeping their small world running. But here, in the empty auditorium with this beautiful instrument under his hands, he couldn't hold back the tide. By the time he reached the powerful third movement, tears were streaming down his face. His fingers flew across the keys in a release of everything he had bottled up for years. The grief, the struggle, the moments of joy found in the midst of hardship, the love he still carried for his wife, the fierce protection he felt for their daughter. He was so absorbed in the music that he didn't notice when the back door of the auditorium quietly opened. He didn't see the center's director, Dave Wilson, step inside, drawn by the unexpected sound of virtuoso playing in his building after hours. He didn't notice as Dave stood motionless, phone in hand, recording the extraordinary scene of the janitor pouring his heart out through the piano keys. Tom finished with a flourish, the final chords resonating through the room. For a moment he sat perfectly still, eyes closed, breathing hard as if he'd run a marathon. The silence that followed felt almost holy. Then the sound of a single person clapping broke the spell. Tom's eyes snapped open, and he turned to see Dave walking down the center aisle, a look of astonishment on his face. "Tom?" Dave said, his voice filled with disbelief. "That was incredible. I had no idea you could play like that." Heat rushed to Tom's face as embarrassment replaced the emotional high of playing. He stood quickly, nearly knocking over the piano bench. "I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson. I shouldn't have. I was just finishing up cleaning and—" Dave held up his hand, stopping Tom's apologies. "Please don't apologize. That was one of the most beautiful performances I've heard in this hall. How long have you been playing?" Tom shifted uncomfortably. "Since I was a kid. I studied music in college, actually." Dave's eyebrows rose. "And now you're cleaning our floors? What happened, if you don't mind me asking?" The question wasn't asked unkindly, but Tom still felt a knot form in his throat. He rarely talked about his past with people at work. It was easier to be just Tom the janitor, reliable and invisible. "Life happened," he said simply. "My wife got sick a few years back. Cancer, the medical bills. Well, you know how it goes. After she passed, I needed something steady for my daughter and me. The benefits here are good." Dave nodded slowly, processing this information about an employee he'd greeted daily for years without really knowing. "Your daughter, Abby, right? Does she know what an incredibly talented father she has?" A small smile crossed Tom's face. "She's heard me play at home. We have an old upright that's seen better days, but I don't play much anymore. Not like this." "That's a shame," Dave said, coming closer to the stage. "A gift like yours shouldn't be hidden away." Tom shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I should get back to work. I still need to finish up here and—" "Tom," Dave interrupted gently. "I just recorded part of what you played." He held up his phone. "Would it be okay if I shared this with someone? We have a board member who runs our music program, and I think she'd be very interested in meeting you." Tom felt a flutter of something he hadn't experienced in years, a mixture of fear and hope. He thought about Abby, about the way her face lit up when he played their old piano at home, about how she had asked for lessons last year that he couldn't afford to give her. "I don't know, Mr. Wilson. I'm just trying to keep things simple right now." Dave nodded respectfully. "I understand. Just think about it. No pressure. But sometimes life gives us second chances when we least expect them." As Tom gathered his cleaning supplies, a small part of him, a part he thought had died along with his dreams years ago, began to stir. Maybe, just maybe, there was still music in his future after all. For the next few days, Tom tried to push the incident from his mind. He focused on his usual routine, getting Abby to school in the morning, working his shift at the community center, helping with homework in the evenings. But something had shifted inside him. After years of keeping his passion locked away, playing that grand piano had awakened something he couldn't easily put back to sleep. "Dad, you're doing it again," Abby said one evening as they sat at their small kitchen table. Tom looked up from his untouched plate of spaghetti. "Doing what?" "That thing with your fingers." She mimicked a piano-playing motion. "You've been super distracted since Tuesday. What's going on?" Tom smiled at his daughter's perceptiveness. At 12, Abby was becoming more and more like her mother, observant, straightforward, impossible to fool. With her dark curly hair pulled back in a ponytail and those serious brown eyes studying him, Tom felt a familiar pang in his chest. Linda would be so proud of the young woman their daughter was becoming. It's nothing, sweetheart. Just thinking about work stuff. Abby raised an eyebrow in a perfect imitation of her late mother's "I don't believe you" face. Since when do you think about work stuff while playing piano under the table? Tom laughed, caught. Okay, detective. If you must know, I played the piano at the center after hours the other day. The director heard me and, well, he seemed impressed. Abby's eyes widened. You played the big shiny one on the stage? The one that looks like it costs more than our car? That's the one. And you got caught? Are you in trouble? Concern flashed across her face. No trouble, actually. Tom hesitated, unsure how much to share about Dave's interest. He didn't want to get her hopes up about something that would probably lead nowhere. Mr. Wilson just said some nice things about my playing, that's all. Abby twirled spaghetti around her fork, thinking. You should play more, Dad. Not just at home sometimes. You're really good, like, way better than Mrs. Winter's students. Tom reached across the table and gently tugged one of her curls. And how would you know that, Miss Miller? Were you spying on the recital before I picked you up from your aunt's house? Abby grinned. Maybe. Jenny from my math class was playing, and I wanted to see if she was any good. She took a bite of her dinner, then added more seriously, Mom would want you to play again. She always said you were meant to do music. Tom felt his throat tighten. Eat your dinner before it gets cold, kiddo. But that night, after Abby had gone to bed, Tom sat at their old upright piano. He ran his fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them down, not wanting to wake his daughter. Linda had always encouraged his music even when life got tough. Even during her illness, she would ask him to play for her in the hospital when she felt strong enough. Promise me you won't give it up completely, she had said during one of their last conversations. Even if it's just playing Happy Birthday for Abby once a year. Don't let that part of yourself die, Tom. He hadn't exactly kept that promise. After she passed, the piano had sat mostly unused, a painful reminder of happier times. He'd play simple tunes for Abby occasionally, but nothing serious, nothing that required him to truly feel the music. It had been easier that way, until now. The next morning, Tom dropped Abby at school and arrived at the community center earlier than usual. He was sweeping the front entrance when a sleek black car pulled into the parking lot. A woman he recognized as Harriet Bell stepped out. Mrs. Bell was something of a local legend, a former concert pianist who now served on the board of several arts organizations, including the community center. Tom had cleaned her office many times but had never actually spoken to her. He continued sweeping, keeping his head down as she approached the entrance. "Good morning," she said as she passed, her voice warm and cultured. "Morning, ma'am," Tom replied politely, stepping aside. To his surprise, she stopped and turned to him. "You're Tom Miller, aren't you?" Tom looked up, startled. "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Bell smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. Though in her 70s, she stood tall and elegant in a simple blue dress, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. "I've been hoping to meet you. Dave showed me a rather remarkable video yesterday." Heat rushed to Tom's face. So Dave had shared the recording after all. "I apologize for using the piano without permission. It won't happen again." "Oh, my dear, that's not why I wanted to meet you." She waved away his apology. "I wanted to thank you for what was easily the most moving rendition of Beethoven I've heard in this building. And believe me, I've heard many." Tom didn't know what to say. It had been so long since anyone had complimented his playing, anyone except Abby and Linda. "Would you have a moment to chat?" Mrs. Bell asked. "Perhaps after you finish your morning duties? Dave mentioned you usually take a break around 10. Yes, I suppose I could," Tom stammered, completely thrown off balance by this turn of events. "Wonderful. I'll be in the conference room until 11. Join me when you can." With another warm smile, she continued into the building. Tom stood frozen, broom in hand. What could Harriet Bell possibly want to discuss with him? The last time he'd had a chat with someone important about his music, he'd been 22 and auditioning for a prestigious master's program, a program he'd ultimately turned down when Linda got pregnant with Abby. At precisely 10 o'clock, after finishing his morning tasks, Tom knocked hesitantly on the conference room door. "Come in," called Mrs. Bell's voice. Tom entered to find her sitting at the large table, a laptop open in front of her. She gestured to a chair across from her. Please sit down. Would you like some coffee? I brought an extra cup just in case. She pushed a paper cup toward him. Thank you, Tom said, taking the seat but leaving the coffee untouched. His hands were already shaky enough. So, Tom, Mrs. Bell began, closing her laptop. Dave tells me you studied music in college. Yes, ma'am. Piano performance at State. Under Professor Williams? Tom nodded, surprised. You knew him? Richard and I go way back, she said with a smile. He's an old friend, a brilliant teacher. He was, Tom agreed, relaxing slightly at the mention of his former mentor. I learned a lot from him. And yet you didn't pursue music professionally. It wasn't a question, but there was no judgment in her tone. Tom looked down at his hands, janitor's hands now, calloused from work but still strong, still capable of making music. Life took a different turn. My wife and I had our daughter while I was still in school. We needed stability, health insurance. He trailed off, not wanting to dive into the whole sad story. Mrs. Bell nodded understandingly. Life has a way of rearranging our plans, doesn't it? But talent like yours, it never really goes away. It just waits for the right moment to resurface. She tapped her finger on the closed laptop. Which brings me to why I wanted to speak with you. Tom waited, unsure where this was heading. Our annual benefit concert is coming up in 6 weeks, she continued. It raises money for our music education program. This year we were planning to feature local talents of all ages, students, teachers, community members. After seeing Dave's video, I had an idea. She leaned forward slightly. Would you consider performing? Just one piece. Tom felt as if all the air had been sucked from the room. Me perform at the benefit? Your Beethoven was exquisite, Tom. Raw, emotional, technically impressive. It's exactly the kind of performance that moves people and moves them to donate. She smiled. Plus, there's something rather poetic about featuring someone who works behind the scenes, don't you think? I don't know what to say, Tom stammered. It's been years since I performed in public. That night in the auditorium, I didn't know anyone was listening. Sometimes that's when we play our best, Mrs. Bell said softly. When we're playing just for ourselves or for someone no longer with us. Her perceptive eyes met his, and Tom had the uncomfortable feeling she could see right through him. I need to think about it, he said finally. I have Abby to consider. My schedule, of course, Mrs. Bell interrupted gently. Take some time. The concert is on May 12th, a Saturday evening. We'd need your decision by next Friday to include you in the program. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. My personal number is on there. Call me anytime if you have questions. Tom took the card, his mind spinning. Thank you. I will think about it. As he left the conference room and returned to his cleaning cart, Tom felt like he was walking in a dream. 6 weeks ago, his biggest concern had been figuring out how to afford new shoes for Abby's growing feet. Now Harriet Bell, a woman who had played in concert halls around the world, wanted him to perform at the benefit. That evening, as he and Abby walked home from the bus stop, Tom found himself studying his daughter's profile. How would she feel about her dad performing in public? Would she be proud or embarrassed? There was only one way to find out. So, he said casually, something interesting happened at work today. Abby looked up at him. Yeah, what's that? I got invited to play piano at the center's benefit concert next month. Abby stopped walking so suddenly that Tom took 2 more steps before realizing she wasn't beside him. He turned to find her staring at him, mouth open. Are you serious? She demanded. Like on the big stage? With people watching? Tom nodded, trying to gauge her reaction. It would just be one piece. A slow smile spread across Abby's face, the biggest smile Tom had seen since before Linda got sick. Dad, that's amazing. You have to do it! The pure joy in her expression made something shift in Tom's chest. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to keep that promise to Linda after all. You think so? He asked, already knowing what his answer to Mrs. Bell would be. Abby grabbed his hand and squeezed it tight. I think Mom would say it's about time. The next few weeks brought changes to Tom and Abby's quiet routine. After calling Mrs. Bell to accept her invitation, Tom found himself staying late at the community center 3 evenings a week, practicing on the grand piano after his shift ended. Dave had given him a key to the auditorium and permission to use the piano whenever the space wasn't booked for events. At first, Tom felt like an imposter. His hands were stiffer than they used to be, and passages he once played effortlessly now required careful practice. But with each session, something inside him seemed to loosen and warm, like an engine turning over after a long winter. "You're humming again," Abby pointed out one morning as they ate breakfast. "You used to do that all the time when I was little." Tom hadn't even noticed. "Was I? Sorry about that." "Don't be sorry," she said, grinning over her cereal bowl. "It's nice. You seem happier." He realized with surprise that she was right. Despite the nervousness about the upcoming performance, he did feel lighter somehow. More present. The constant background hum of worry that had been his companion for years was still there. But now it shared space with something else, a sense of purpose beyond just getting through each day. "Have you decided what you're going to play?" Abby asked, draining the milk from her bowl. Tom nodded. "I think so. Mrs. Bell suggested Beethoven since that's what she heard on the video. But I'm thinking about Chopin instead. The Ballade in G minor." Abby's eyes widened. "Is that the one with the really fast part at the end that sounds like a storm?" Tom smiled, touched that she remembered. "That's the one. I used to play it for your mom. She liked the stormy parts," Abby said softly. "She said they made the quiet parts more beautiful." Tom reached across the table and squeezed his daughter's hand. "She was right about that. Smart lady, your mom." That evening after work, Tom was heading to his practice session when he noticed a small group gathered in the auditorium. Mrs. Bell sat in the center aisle about halfway back, surrounded by several other well-dressed people. Tom recognized a few of them as board members from the plaques on their offices. He hesitated at the door, unsure whether to enter or come back later. Mrs. Bell spotted him and waved him in. "Tom, perfect timing. We were just discussing the benefit concert. Please join us for a moment." Feeling self-conscious in his work uniform, Tom walked down the aisle. "Everyone, this is Tom Miller, our secret weapon for the fundraiser," Mrs. Bell announced, her eyes twinkling. "Tom, these are some of our key donors and board members." Tom nodded awkwardly as several people smiled at him with curious expressions. "We were just talking about the program order," Mrs. Bell continued. "Would you mind terribly giving our friends a little preview of what you'll be performing?" "Just a minute or two would be wonderful." Tom felt his stomach drop. He'd been practicing hard, but he wasn't ready for an audience yet, especially not these people who probably attended professional concerts regularly. I'm not sure that's a good idea," he stammered. "I'm still working out some rough spots." A heavy-set man in an expensive suit spoke up. "Harriet has been singing your praises for weeks. Mr. Miller, she claims you're going to be the highlight of the evening." His tone suggested he found this unlikely. Something in the man's doubtful expression stirred a flicker of pride in Tom's chest. Before he could reconsider, he heard himself say, "I can play a little of the opening if you'd like." Mrs. Bell beamed at him. "Wonderful. Please go right ahead." Tom made his way to the stage, his heart pounding. As he sat at the piano, he reminded himself that he'd performed under pressure before long ago. He placed his hands on the keys, took a deep breath, and began to play. The opening notes of the ballad floated out into the auditorium, gentle, questioning, like the beginning of a story. Tom kept his eyes on his hands, focusing on the feel of the keys and the sound filling the space around him. After playing through the lyrical introduction, he transitioned into the more dramatic section, letting the music build naturally. When he reached a suitable stopping point about 2 minutes in, he lifted his hands from the keys. For a moment there was silence. Then applause broke out, led by Mrs. Bell's enthusiastic clapping. "Bravo!" she called out. "What did I tell you all? And that's just a taste of what's to come." The skeptical board member was nodding thoughtfully. "Very impressive, Mr. Miller. I look forward to hearing the full piece at the benefit." As the group filed out, discussing other aspects of the event, Mrs. Bell lingered behind. She approached the stage with a satisfied smile. "You handled that beautifully, Tom. I hope you don't mind the ambush, but I needed them to understand what I've been trying to tell them." "Which is what exactly?" Tom asked, still feeling the adrenaline from the impromptu performance. "That music isn't just about technical perfection or prestigious training. It's about something deeper, something that connects us all." She looked at him with those perceptive eyes. "You play from your heart, Tom. That's rarer than you might think, even among professionals." Tom felt both flattered and uncomfortable with her praise. "I'm just a guy who happens to play piano, Mrs. Bell. I don't want anyone getting the wrong idea." "And what idea would that be?" Tom shrugged. "That I'm something special. I had my chance at a music career 20 years ago, and I chose a different path. I'm a janitor who plays piano, not the other way around." Mrs. Bell studied him for a moment. "Has it occurred to you that perhaps you can be both? That the path you chose, the one that led you to your daughter, to your life as it is now, doesn't negate your gift?" Before Tom could respond, she patted his arm. "Just something to think about. I'll let you get to your practice now. You're sounding wonderful, by the way." As she left, Tom sat at the piano, turning her words over in his mind. Could he really be both? For so long he'd kept his two lives separate, the musician he once was and the father and worker he'd become. The idea that they could coexist seemed foreign, almost dangerous. Yet here he was, sitting at this magnificent instrument in his work clothes, with cleaning chemicals still clinging to his hands, playing music that moved people. Maybe Mrs. Bell was right. Maybe the boundaries he'd created were of his own making. The next afternoon, as Tom was cleaning the community center's lobby, he noticed a flyer on the bulletin board that made him stop in his tracks. It was an advertisement for the benefit concert, featuring a list of performers. There, right at the bottom of the page, was his name, special guest performer Tom Miller. Seeing his name in print gave him a jolt. This was really happening. People would pay money to hear him play. People who didn't know about his past, who only knew him as the quiet janitor who kept to himself. As he continued working, Tom's mind wandered to the sheet music waiting for him at home. He'd been playing from memory so far, but if he was going to do this properly, he should probably have the score in front of him just in case. The problem was he didn't own a copy of the ballad anymore. Most of his music books had been sold years ago to help pay bills during Linda's illness. That evening, after picking up Abby from her friend's house, Tom made an unexpected detour. "Where are we going?" Abby asked as they drove past their usual turn. "I need to make a quick stop," Tom replied. "There's something I need for the concert." 10 minutes later, they pulled into the parking lot of Henderson's music shop. Tom hadn't set foot in a music store in years, and walking through the door brought back a rush of memories. The distinctive smell of paper and wood, the reverent quiet broken only by occasional snippets of melodies as customers tried out instruments. "Whoa," Abby whispered, looking around with wide eyes at the rows of gleaming instruments. "This place is cool." Tom headed for the sheet music section in the back, scanning the shelves until he found the classical piano area. He quickly located a book of Chopin's ballads and flipped through it, confirming that it contained the piece he needed. As he stood in line to pay, Abby wandered over to a display of keyboard accessories. She picked up a metronome and turned it over in her hands. "Dad," she said when he joined her with his purchase, "do you think I could learn to play? Like for real?" The question caught Tom off guard. "You want piano lessons?" Abby nodded, suddenly serious. "I've been thinking about it since you started practicing for the concert. I know I'm kind of old to start, but—" "You're not too old," Tom assured her quickly. "Not at all. Plenty of great musicians started later than 12. He looked down at the book in his hands, then back at his daughter's hopeful face. "We'd need to find you a teacher, though. And lessons aren't cheap." "I could do extra chores," Abby offered, "and maybe use some of the money Grandma sent for my birthday." Tom felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of the tight control he'd maintained over their lives for so long. "Let's talk about it after the concert, okay? But I think we might be able to work something out." The smile that lit up Abby's face was worth every penny they didn't have yet. As they left the store, Tom realized that music was finding its way back into both their lives, one small step at a time. And maybe that was exactly what Linda would have wanted all along. That night, as he sat at their old upright piano with his new sheet music, working through the trickier passages of the ballade, Tom noticed Abby sitting quietly on the couch, watching him with a look of concentration. Her fingers moved slightly on her lap, mimicking his movements on the keys. The sight filled him with a bittersweet joy. Whatever happened at the benefit concert, whatever came next in their lives, they would face it together, with music as their companion once again. As the day of the benefit concert drew closer, Tom's evenings at the grand piano became longer and more intense. The ballade was coming together beautifully, but the final section, with its whirlwind of notes and technical challenges, still gave him trouble when he was tired. Tonight, he'd been working on the same passage for nearly an hour, his frustration growing with each attempt. "You're rushing it," came a voice from the back of the auditorium. Tom's hands froze above the keys as he squinted into the dimly lit space. Mrs. Bell emerged from the shadows, making her way down the center aisle. "I didn't mean to interrupt," she said, approaching the stage. "I left some papers in my office and heard you playing as I was leaving." She climbed the steps to the stage and stood beside the piano. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the bench. Tom moved over and Mrs. Bell sat beside him, her posture perfect despite her age. "This section," she said, pointing to the music, "it's not about speed, it's about control." Her fingers moved gracefully over the keys, demonstrating the passage at a slightly slower tempo than Tom had been attempting. Even at the reduced speed, the notes flowed with a clarity and precision that made Tom's attempts sound clumsy by comparison. "You see?" she asked, looking at him with a small smile. "Better to play it cleanly at 90% than messily at full speed." Tom nodded, embarrassed that she had heard his struggles. "It's been a long time since I tackled something this difficult. And yet you chose one of the most challenging pieces in the romantic repertoire," she observed, her eyes twinkling. "Not exactly easing back into things, are you?" Tom laughed softly. "Go big or go home, I guess." "Try it again," Mrs. Bell encouraged. "But this time, think about the story you're telling. This isn't just a technical exercise." Chopin was painting pictures with sound. Tom positioned his hands and began the passage again, forcing himself to hold back slightly. Mrs. Bell was right. At the more controlled tempo, he could hear how the notes related to each other, how they built on one another to create the musical storm. "Better." Mrs. Bell nodded when he finished. "Much better. Now take that approach through the entire final section. Build gradually. Let the audience come with you on the journey." For the next 45 minutes, Mrs. Bell coached Tom through the ballade, offering suggestions on phrasing, dynamics, and technical approaches. Her guidance was gentle but precise, drawing on decades of experience. "You have a beautiful touch, Tom," she said as they were finishing. "Don't let anxiety about the technical challenges rob you of that. Remember why you're playing, not to impress anyone, but to express something." Tom thought about that as he drove home later. Why was he playing? Initially, he'd agreed to perform because it seemed to make Abby happy, and because he'd found it hard to refuse Mrs. Bell's enthusiastic request. But now, after weeks of reconnecting with the music he'd once loved so deeply, his reasons had shifted. He was playing because it filled a space inside him that had been empty for too long. He was playing for Linda, who had always believed in his talent. He was playing for himself, not the young man with big dreams who'd once imagined concert halls and recording contracts, but the person he was now, with all his struggles and joys and hard-won wisdom. The realization brought a sense of calm that stayed with him through the next morning as he went about his cleaning duties at the center. The nervous tension that had been building wasn't gone, but it felt different now, more like anticipation than fear. As Tom was mopping the hallway outside the administrative offices, Dave Wilson stepped out of his door. "There you are, Tom. Got a minute?" Tom leaned his mop against the wall. "Sure, what's up?" Dave handed him a glossy program booklet. "Hot off the presses. Thought you might want to see the final version before Saturday." Tom flipped through the pages until he found his name. There was even a short bio beside it. Nothing fancy, just a few lines mentioning his music background and current role at the center. Seeing it in print made everything feel suddenly, undeniably real. "We're expecting a good turnout," Dave continued. "Ticket sales are ahead of last year already. Mrs. Bell has been talking you up to everyone who'll listen." He chuckled. "No pressure or anything?" Tom smiled weakly. "None at all." That evening, Tom and Abby had dinner with his sister Kate and her husband Ben. It had become something of a tradition over the past few years. Friday night dinner at Kate's house, a small bright spot in their otherwise tight routine. "So, tomorrow's the big day," Kate said as they cleared the dinner plates. "Are you ready?" Tom nodded, helping her load the dishwasher. "As ready as I'll ever be." Kate bumped his shoulder affectionately with her own. "Linda would be bursting with pride, you know. She always said you were meant to share your music." "That's what I told him." Abby chimed in from the living room where she was playing a board game with her uncle. "Dad's gonna knock their socks off." Kate lowered her voice. Nervous? Terrified, Tom admitted quietly. What if I freeze up?
What if I make a fool of myself?
Then you'll have a funny story to tell, Kate replied pragmatically. But you won't, you never do. Remember how you used to practice for hours before recitals in college? You'd work yourself into a state of panic and then walk out on stage and play like you were born to do it. Tom smiled at the memory. Things were different then. Not so different, Kate insisted. You're still you. The music is still in there. She dried her hands on a towel and looked him in the eye. Just promise me one thing. What's that? Enjoy it. Don't just get through it, be present for it. This is a gift you're giving yourself as much as anyone else. Later that night, after they'd returned home and Abby had gone to bed, Tom sat at their old upright piano with the lights dimmed. He didn't play. He just sat there, hands resting lightly on the keys, thinking about Kate's words. Be present for it. He'd spent so many years just getting through each day, focused on survival, paying bills, caring for Abby, keeping their small world from falling apart. The idea of actually being present, of fully experiencing a moment rather than just enduring it, felt almost foreign. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Tom went through his usual Saturday routine on autopilot, making breakfast, helping Abby with her weekly chores, fixing the leaky faucet in the bathroom that had been dripping for days. But beneath the ordinary activities ran a current of anticipation that made even the most mundane tasks feel somehow significant. By late afternoon, the butterflies in his stomach had turned into something more like hummingbirds. Faster, more insistent. As he stood in front of the mirror adjusting the tie Kate had lent him, Tom barely recognized the man staring back. He'd gotten a haircut yesterday, and the nice dress shirt, another loan from his brother-in-law, made him look more like the college student he'd once been than the janitor he'd become. Dad? Abby called from the living room. We should probably get going soon. Aunt Kate texted that they're already on their way. Tom took a deep breath and left the bathroom. Abby was waiting by the door wearing the floral dress she usually saved for special occasions. She'd done something different with her hair, too, pulling it back with a sparkly clip that had been her mother's. You look beautiful, kiddo, Tom said, his voice catching slightly. Abby grinned. You clean up pretty good yourself, Dad. Her expression turned more serious. Are you scared? Tom considered lying, then decided against it. Yeah, a little. But that's normal. Abby nodded wisely. Jenny says she always feels like she's going to throw up before piano recitals. But then she plays and it's fine. That sounds about right. Tom agreed with a smile. The community center looked different in the evening light, transformed from its usual functional appearance into something more elegant. The lobby was filled with people in nice clothes, many of whom Tom recognized. Parents of kids who took classes at the center, local business owners, familiar faces from around town. What struck him most was how nobody seemed to recognize him. He'd cleaned the floors these people walked on, emptied their trash, wiped down their countertops, all while being essentially invisible. Now dressed in borrowed clothes with Abby proudly at his side, he moved among them as a stranger. Backstage, Tom found a quiet corner to look through the music one last time. The performance area had been set up with care, the grand piano gleaming under the stage lights, fresh flowers arranged nearby. Through a gap in the curtains, he could see the auditorium filling up. There you are, came Mrs. Bell's voice behind him. She looked elegant in a deep blue dress, her silver hair arranged in a more elaborate style than usual. How are you feeling? Like I might be sick, Tom admitted. Mrs. Bell laughed softly. That's the mark of a true performer. If you weren't nervous, I'd be worried. She patted his arm. You're on after the youth choir, about 40 minutes into the program. I'll make sure someone comes to get you when it's time. As she turned to leave, she added, Oh, and Tom, the last row, center section, that's where your daughter and sister are sitting. If you find yourself getting lost in the nerves, look there. Tom nodded gratefully. The next half hour passed in a blur as Tom listened. Enid to the sounds of the concert beginning. The welcome speech, the applause, the first few performances. He paced quietly in his corner, running through the music in his head, flexing his fingers, taking deep breaths. Finally, a volunteer appeared. Mr. Miller, you're up next. Tom followed her to the wings of the stage, where he could see a group of children in matching blue shirts finishing their song. The audience applauded warmly as they filed off stage. Then Dave Wilson stepped up to the microphone. Our next performer is someone many of you pass by every day without knowing the extraordinary talent he possesses. By day, he keeps our center running smoothly as part of our maintenance staff. Tonight, he shares his gift for music with us. Please welcome to the stage, Tom Miller. The applause that followed seemed to come from very far away as Tom walked onto the stage. The lights were brighter than he remembered from his practice sessions, the audience a shadowy mass beyond them. He made his way to the piano, adjusted the bench, and sat down. For a moment, he froze, his mind suddenly terrifyingly blank. Then he remembered Mrs. Bell's advice and looked to the last row, center section. Even from a distance, he could make out Abby's face, eager and proud. Beside her sat Kate, who gave him a subtle thumbs up. Tom placed his hands on the keys and began to play. The first notes of Chopin's Ballade in G minor floated across the auditorium, gentle and questioning. Tom's fingers moved with a will of their own, guided by muscle memory and countless hours of practice. As the familiar melody unfolded beneath his hands, the nervous tension in his shoulders began to ease. This was just him and the piano now. The same conversation they'd been having for weeks in the empty auditorium after hours. The fact that 300 people were listening didn't change the essential truth of what he was doing. Telling a story through music, the way he'd always done best. The opening section flowed into the more dramatic middle passages, and Tom found himself leaning into the music, no longer thinking about individual notes or technical challenges. He was simply feeling it. The rises and falls, the moments of quiet beauty and gathering storm. In his mind, he wasn't on a stage but somewhere more intimate, playing for Linda in their first apartment, or for Abby on quiet evenings at home. When he reached the final section, the one that had given him so much trouble, Tom took a breath and remembered Mrs. Bell's advice. Control, not speed. Tell the story. He began the cascade of notes slightly under tempo, building gradually, letting each phrase lead naturally to the next. His hands flew across the keys with increasing urgency, yet each note rang clear and purposeful. As the piece rushed toward its powerful conclusion, Tom was barely aware of his surroundings anymore. There was just the music, wild and beautiful and alive under his fingers. He struck the final chords with everything he had, letting them resonate fully before lifting his hands from the keys. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the auditorium erupted in applause, not just the polite clapping that had followed other performances, but an enthusiastic, sustained ovation. People rose to their feet, first in small clusters and then in waves, until most of the audience was standing. Tom sat frozen at the piano, overwhelmed by the response. He hadn't expected this, hadn't even allowed himself to hope for it. He stood shakily and turned to face the audience, bowing the way he'd been taught in college so many years ago. As he straightened, his eyes found Abby in the back row. Even from a distance, he could see the huge smile on her face and the tears streaming down her cheeks as she clapped wildly. Beside her, Kate was beaming, giving him a look that clearly said, "I told you so." Tom managed another bow before walking off stage on unsteady legs. In the wings, Dave clapped him on the shoulder with a wide grin. That, Dave said emphatically, was something else. Absolutely incredible. Tom tried to form a response, but his mind was still catching up to what had just happened. The applause continued as he made his way backstage, where other performers waited for their turns. "I don't think they're going to let you get away without an encore," Dave said, glancing back toward the stage. The applause isn't dying down. "An encore?" Tom repeated blankly. "I didn't prepare an encore." "Play anything," Dave urged. "Whatever comes to mind." Mrs. Bell appeared beside them, her eyes shining. "Dave's right, you need to go back out there. Just play something from the heart. You can't leave them like this." The applause was indeed continuing, punctuated now by rhythmic clapping that made the message clear. The audience wanted more. Tom took a deep breath and walked back onto the stage, greeted by another wave of applause and cheers. He sat at the piano again, trying to decide what to play. His mind raced through possibilities before settling on something so simple, so obvious. He almost laughed. He began to play a piece that wasn't technically difficult or impressive, just a short, sweet melody he'd composed years ago as a lullaby for newborn Abby. He'd never written it down or given it a name. It had simply been Abby's song, played night after night as he rocked his daughter to sleep. The tender, uncomplicated melody seemed to cast a spell over the auditorium. After the technical fireworks of the ballad, this quiet, heartfelt piece created a moment of perfect stillness. As the final notes faded away, the audience responded with gentle, appreciative applause, different from the excitement before, but no less moving. Tom bowed once more and left the stage, this time for good. The rest of the concert continued, but he barely registered the other performances as he sat in a chair backstage, still processing what had happened. People he'd never spoken to before stopped by between acts to congratulate him or shake his hand. "I didn't know the janitor was a concert pianist," one woman exclaimed, causing Tom to smile despite himself. "I'm not," he replied honestly. "Just a guy who loves music." After the concert ended and the crowd began to disperse, Tom made his way to the lobby where Abby ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist. "Dad, you were amazing," she practically shouted, her face glowing with excitement. Everyone was blown away. Mr. Reynolds from my school was sitting near us and he kept saying, "Extraordinary." Over and over. Kate hugged him next. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. Linda would be over the moon. For the next half hour, Tom found himself at the center of attention as guests and other performers approached to compliment his playing. Mrs. Bell stood nearby, looking pleased as she watched the interactions. When the crowd finally thinned, she came over with Dave and a man Tom didn't recognize. Tall, distinguished-looking with wire-rimmed glasses. "Tom, I'd like you to meet Richard Taylor," Mrs. Bell said. "He's the director of the Regional Arts Council." "Richard, this is Tom Miller." The man extended his hand with a warm smile. "Mrs. Bell has been telling me about you for weeks, but I must say her praise didn't do you justice. Your performance tonight was remarkable." "Thank you," Tom said, feeling slightly dazed by all the attention. "I won't keep you long," Richard continued, "but I wanted to ask if you might be interested in participating in our community outreach program. We're looking for instructors to teach piano to underprivileged kids once a week. It pays modestly, but more importantly, it gives talented musicians a chance to share their gifts." Tom blinked in surprise. "You want me to teach?" "Based on what I heard tonight, absolutely," Richard nodded. "Teaching requires more than technical skill. It needs heart, which you clearly have in abundance. Think about it and let Mrs. Bell know if you're interested." As Richard moved away to speak with other performers, Tom turned to Mrs. Bell with a questioning look. "Did you arrange this?" he asked. Mrs. Bell's eyes twinkled. "I may have mentioned your name to a few people. The rest was all you, Tom." She squeezed his arm gently. "Think about Richard's offer. It could be a nice way to keep music in your life." Later that night, after the excitement had finally died down and they'd returned home, Tom sat at their L'd upright piano while Abby got ready for bed. His fingers moved idly over the keys, playing snippets of the ballad and other pieces that came to mind. His thoughts drifted to Richard's offer. Teaching piano once a week, it wasn't a career change, just a small step in a new direction. He could keep his job at the community center, maintain the stability he'd worked so hard to create for Abby, but add something that had been missing for so long. "Dad?" Abby's voice came from the hallway. She was in her pajamas, hair damp from the shower. "What was that song you played at the end?" "The short one." "It was really pretty." Tom smiled. "That was your song. I wrote it for you when you were a baby." Abby's eyes widened. "Really? You wrote that?" "I did. I used to play it every night when I rocked you to sleep. You probably don't remember." Abby came over and sat beside him on the piano bench. "Could you teach it to me?" The request was so simple, yet it landed in Tom's heart with unexpected weight. "You want to learn it?" Abby nodded. "It's my song, right? I should know how to play it." Tom positioned his hands on the keys and played the opening phrase slowly. "It starts like this. See the pattern?" Abby placed her smaller hands on the keys, attempting to mimic his finger positions. Her first try was hesitant, the notes coming out uneven and halting. "That's good," Tom encouraged. "Now try again, but feel the rhythm like this." He tapped it out on the edge of the piano. They spent the next 20 minutes working on just the first few measures, Tom gently guiding Abby's hands, explaining about finger positions and touch. Her focus was intense, her determination obvious in the set of her jaw, so like her mother's when Linda was working on something important. "We can work on more tomorrow," Tom finally said. noticing Abby trying to hide a yawn. "It's getting late," Abby nodded reluctantly. "Promise?" "Promise." As he tucked her into bed, Abby looked up at him with serious eyes. "Dad, are you going to take that teaching job the man offered you?" Tom was surprised she'd overheard that conversation. "I'm thinking about it. Would that be okay with you?" "I think it would be really cool," Abby said. "And maybe if you were teaching other kids, you could teach me too. Properly, I mean. Regular lessons and everything." Tom felt his throat tighten. "I'd like that very much." After Abby fell asleep, Tom returned to the living room and sat at the piano again. His fingers found the keys without conscious thought, playing Abby's song once more. The simple melody that had once soothed his infant daughter now felt like a bridge, connecting the young father he'd been to the man he was becoming, connecting the music of his past to the possibilities of his future. Tomorrow, he would call Mrs. Bell and accept Richard's offer. He would talk to Dave about adjusting his schedule at the community center. He would look into proper lessons for Abby. Small steps, nothing dramatic, but steps in a new direction nonetheless. As the last notes of the song faded into the quiet apartment, Tom closed the piano lid gently. The stage lights and applause of tonight would become a memory, but the music itself that would remain, flowing through his life and Abby's in new ways. The janitor who played piano was becoming something else, not exactly the concert pianist of his youthful dreams, but something perhaps more meaningful. A father sharing his gift, a teacher opening doors for others, a man rediscovering his voice one note at a time.